So today we're talking with Eddy Monge. He is the founder of Tu Lider, an organization focused on providing emotional development, leadership, and trauma healing resources to youth and community leaders in El Salvador. Eddy is using his passion for culture and human development to empower youth to live healthier lives. So we're so excited to talk with you, Eddy, and I'm so happy to have you here in the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. I really appreciate this and very excited to be here. Yes, I am indeed joining from El Salvador at the moment, where it's about 95 degrees and about to rain, which is very exciting. And yeah, I've been doing some work from here with Tu Lider, which is awesome. I recently moved here from New York City. So, us cipotes living all over the world.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. So yeah, that's exciting. The weather over there. I'm kind of jealous about the weather. But yeah, thank you. So today we're talking with Eddy because we're talking about under this series about mental health here in the podcast. And when Eddy reached out to me to be a guest, I was like, oh, he's gonna be perfect for the one that we're planning. And then especially for like his organization, what he focused on, and he also has a podcast. So first of all, we're going to start with what is like what we're going to talk mainly in this episode, which is about trauma. I know, like Eddy said, like he's not an expert, and we both not an expert. It's something that we both have learned through research, through experience, and to just reading. So Eddy, like kind of if you can tell us a little bit like what is trauma.
Definitely. So, as you said, Alejandra, I think it's important for listeners to know that you and I are not experts. I'm not
Hmm.
an expert. I'm not a therapist, and
Hmm.
indeed, I everything I share with you today will be based on my own personal experiences
Hmm.
and everything I've learned through creating
Hmm.
my journey and also through creating Tu Líder. So, for me, trauma is any experiences you have in your
Hmm.
life that mark you and they mark you in a way in which they break
Hmm.
pieces of you. And many times this could be from experiences that
Hmm.
are from your parents, from strangers, from people you know, from people you trust, from people you don't know. And they leave a dent in you that never healed properly. And if you never give it an opportunity to heal, so in that trauma, the same way that if you crash a car into another vehicle, that is an experience that will leave
Hmm.
dents in the vehicle, the same way to me are
Hmm.
experiences that we go through that leave marks in us. The beauty, I think, and I say
Mhm,
the beauty of the journey of life, especially when it comes to
mhm,
traumatic experiences, is that we have an opportunity to heal them if we choose to. Sometimes we choose to not look at
mhm,
them as traumatic experiences, and that's okay. Maybe we don't want to put that label on them,
mhm,
but what we do when we don't
mhm.
necessarily look at them as the damage they've caused is that we minimize the damage they've caused.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I think that it's very important what you said. Like, if we don't want to put the label, because sometimes, like I said, we go through experiences, and especially like in the community we live on, sometimes we just like, oh, solo fue una experiencia, but we don't characterize it as that experience that you went through is actually affecting you right now, or it's affecting that relationship that you have with someone or a family member, or how you react to certain things. And I think that is very important, like sometimes to understand that trauma can be caused through different type of experiences. That can be an accident, it can be something that happened between you and a person, it can be sexual assault, it can be bullying, it can be like enormous of things. It is not something that is just specific, oh, you just get trauma because of this experience. It's something that is completely is out of different relation, like different experience that you get throughout your life, and it can happen from a very young age. And even us right now, like we're adults, we might experience something that it maybe in years like to come, it might cause the in a traumatic scene in
A
our life.
hundred
Yeah.
percent. Yeah, definitely 100%. I think it's
Yeah.
it's important to note that first, I'll say this also to people listening. If you
Mm-hmm.
have experienced any traumatic experiences that you recognize bring
Mm-hmm.
you back to a certain place, feel free to listen to this. Feel free to not listen to this
Mm-hmm.
if you believe that it will cause you to have a some sort of connection back to the experience you
Yes.
had, which to me is called a flashback. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely feel free to disconnect at any moment
Mm-hmm.
from listening to this. But I will say, you know, us connecting or recognizing our trauma can be the first step towards healing, but that first step is usually
Mm-hmm.
the hardest.
Yes.
People think that as you go through the journey of healing,
Mm-hmm.
it will be very difficult, and indeed it will be, but the reward will be worth it. Once you start experiencing that peace that your heart is looking for, that
Mm-hmm.
your body is looking for, then you'll start to experience relief.
Mm-hmm.
And then to me, that's where you start to see your trauma or the trauma you went through, whether you want to call it that or not, as something that
Mm-hmm.
is actually not for you to keep. It's part of your story, but it's not for you to hold on
Mm-hmm.
to. You're
Yes.
not meant to hold on to your trauma and
Mm-hmm.
never let go of it. You're meant to go through the trauma you went through,
Mm-hmm.
go through the healing journey you went through for you to become the person you're meant to become.
Yes. Yes. And yes, 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 everything that you said, because it's true. Sometimes I feel like I tend to think about, my life and be like, okay, things happen for a reason. And that's something that we say, things happen for a reason. And would I happen for that? Like, I wouldn't be here. Right. And I tend to say, if I can share a little bit with you, and I can tend to say, like, about the experience of like the divorce of my parents, how, in itself, like people will say, like, oh yeah, it was, they both got separated, but what about the kids? This is another thing that we don't see, right? Like, yeah, it was a marriage that, yeah, it had kids, and people sometimes it focus on the damage that will leave the person, leaving, and the person that would have, because that person was so many, years with a person. But what about the kids? That sometimes that's what I
Hmm.
try to say to people who are like going through divorce, or like they have kids, or they're like, I don't know, I'm like, well, you need to also think about the kids, because for me and my brother, sometimes we go back and we kind of like, we don't want to revive it, but we're like, we know that the relationship, well, first of all, the relationship with my father was broken from it, right? And then how we react, like, I sometimes I think like, I don't know at this age how to react to have a father on my side, because I have never had it, like, I from like, I don't know, of like 12 years now that I haven't had a father figure on my side. So when
Hmm.
I see, for example, and then I feel like this in this case, like, I see a person having an emotion connection with their father, like, you feel like, like, okay, like, that's when I revisit my trauma, that like he
Hmm.
left, if that makes sense. But it's on me to not look others like, oh, I don't have a father. It's like, okay, what I went through, it was because of a better, my mom was having for a, like, really hard time. But I cannot just focus on what happened when I was 12, and that, like, I mean, yes, it did affect me, but I cannot just live in that moment, if that makes sense. And I don't want to that to affect me, because and I'm sharing this to you because sometimes, like, I do think about this, and that's like the most part that I can say that I can relate to trauma, because I it affect me in my relationship, how if I wanted to have a boyfriend, because I didn't want it, or like if I want to get
Hmm.
married, I have the sense that I don't want to go through that.
Hmm. And thank you for sharing that, because I think it's really important to recognize how certain events that take place in our lives, many times we don't categorize them as a
Hmm.
traumatic experience. We think of them as it just happened,
Hmm.
it is what it is, my parents went through this happened to me. It doesn't leave any trauma. We many times minimize
Hmm.
the impact that an event or
Yes.
an experience or something has in our lives, but we don't look at what is left after it. What's left for you to work with
Mm-hmm.
after. And the emotions that it causes in you, the effect that it has in your body, will usually be the one telling you, hey, there's a cut here. I think I like to think of it as, I just recently got a cut on my finger.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever soap falls on this, it hurts. It reminds me that I got cut a couple of days ago. And I
Yeah.
remember of the exact moment when the knife went through my finger and I cut myself. That to me is a similar experience of
Mm-hmm.
what happens
Mm-hmm.
whenever we encounter an experience that is similar to that of our traumatic experience. It reminds us of what we went through
Mm-hmm.
and we relive that moment for a second. However,
Mm-hmm.
what happens when this cut starts to
Yeah.
heal? What happens when the cut actually closes? Have a little scar. However, I'll no longer feel the pain the same way. For a while, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I will, but eventually it'll stop.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I will no longer feel it. I'll touch it, but I'll no longer feel it.
Yeah.
One of my really good
Mm-hmm.
friends, his name is Bill Hoffman. He is a writer and a counselor. And I had a session with him. This was a couple of um, a couple of months back,
Mm-hmm.
and him and I were talking about how people are in their trauma. Essentially, him and I were talking about how people react to their trauma, and many times
Mm-hmm.
this takes an effect in your life. So many times people will react to their trauma in their relationships, and you actually brought this up. We have buttons in our life,
Mm-hmm.
if you can think of it like that, and many times people know how to touch those buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that one button that is
Mm-hmm.
this one traumatic experience that we have never healed from, that when someone touches it, it like automatically turns on every button in your body. What happens when you learn con- to know
Mm-hmm.
exactly point what point is that button connected to? Where's the wire headed to? What happens if you just discover where it's coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is, what happens if you were to disconnect
Yeah.
it? And I think that that's the journey of healing. That is what happens when we
Mm-hmm.
learn to identify our
Mm-hmm.
traumatic experiences in our life. And it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be a family member passing away. It doesn't have to be domestic violence. Many times we only
Mm-hmm.
look at those as traumatic experiences, but we don't look at
Mm-hmm.
things like a divorce and a separation. We don't
Mm-hmm.
look at abandonment. We don't look at things like, yeah, one trauma,
Mm-hmm.
physical trauma, which can leave emotional trauma and even mental, trauma. It can be an accident.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when, a dad in this case,
Yeah.
you share
Mm-hmm.
that it is no longer available. That sense of abandonment will be brought into a future relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so true, and it's very true when you said like we focus on this, like when someone define trauma, we focus on this huge as of traumatic events, but there's little ones. I mean, I don't want to minimalizarlo, but like there's events in your life that it might be not like sexual abuse, sexual assault, like anything of that de ese tamaño, but it will affect you eventually.
Yes.
Like I sometimes like la relación, or sometimes like let's say I tend to like just put a little examples of like maybe you didn't get like a lot of attention when you were little, your parents were always busy, like now when you're older, like that type of you don't want to be feeling that way. We don't see as traumatic, but it does get in your head when you get older, and that's one of the things that I want to talk right now about trauma, because sometimes when we don't see it at the moment, it of course it does affect us later on, and also how our parents trauma sometimes gets passed to us. And that
Mhm.
I feel like this is something that I do wanted to talk to you, especially from the area of El Salvador, as we are not in our community. A lot of people went through the war trauma,
Mhm.
and that's not something that it will se va a borrar with like whatever political views or a president we have in the countries. That would never get away from what these people went through like years of trauma, of militarization and everything. And then of course of the trauma of migrating, because these people were having traumas like these events of like killings and like a lot of displacement, like hiding each other, then get to like like move to other places, and now they're like living in the United States, Europa, donde sea, and now they're having families, and the situation of the relationship with the families sometimes gets misunderstood because they don't know what they're holding on. And sometimes in our community, when we talk about older generation, for example, our parents or grandparents, they're not as open to be like that, or they don't want to talk what is like, I don't know what's the thing, but like the exact name, but like we don't know, they don't know how to say it, or they don't want to even say it in order for not to revivir, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Definitely. I think that if we want to look at the effects of trauma in our lives, we can't just look at our own personal
Mm-hmm.
trauma. We have to also look at our generational trauma because unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
what our parents, what our
Mm-hmm.
grandparents, what our great grandparents have gone through has marked them as well. And that if the cycle has never been cut, then the experiences, unfortunately, the effects of the experiences get passed on. And we see this, as you mentioned, people who've gone through the war. So in this case, Salvadorians that have escaped El Salvador to live in different countries, one of them being my grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
one of them being my grandma. My grandma has been living in the US for the last 35 years,
Mm-hmm.
36 years if I'm right, somewhere around there. And pretty much my entire life
Mm-hmm.
since I've since I've lived. She's more than that. She's lived there
Mm-hmm.
because of the war. She had to leave because of the war. And I won't go into details of what she had to go through, but the effects of her trauma have affected me. I
Yeah.
lived with her since I was 14 until I was
Mm-hmm.
17. I went through those tough years of my life, which everyone knows when you're 14,
Mm-hmm.
15, 16. Nobody understands you. Nobody knows what you're
Mm-hmm.
living. You live in your
Mm-hmm.
own little world and you hope that adults will
Yeah.
just have some space, where they just let you be. Um, but unfortunately, I had to
Mm-hmm.
live my grandma's experiences with her. I know all the stories of what my grandma went through because I listened to them almost every single day. I was my grandma's
Mm-hmm.
therapist in a way, except that I didn't have the title and I didn't get paid for it. I was just there
Mm-hmm.
listening to her because that helped her get through
Mm-hmm.
just one day and another day. My grandma lives with so many, unfortunately, so many things now, like pain on her shoulders, constantly just feeling emotionally not okay, seeing things when they're not there, all just things from the experiences she's had with her life. And my family, unfortunately, has had to go through those things with her, but then now
Mm-hmm.
they also have their own experiences. So, yes, unfortunately, trauma, if the cycle is not
Mm-hmm.
cut, trauma continues to flow through families. If the cycle is not stopped and
Mm-hmm.
put an end to it, then unfortunately it will be passed on generation after
Mm-hmm.
generation.
Yep. Yeah, and then when I started reading about the trauma, the generational trauma, how it does get passed down, from grandparents to parents to now us as their daughters and sons, is like how like you will ask how if like that's one person experience, why do I get to be affected? And I think I read something that is actually like it affects like your like DNA and like how it goes. Like it's very científicamente,
Hmm.
tiene un término bien científico por ahí. But it's like when you start reading, like, wow, and then you create, and then when you start talking with your parents, or because your parents did things separate, like differently because of the trauma of their grandparents, and you will do things separately because of what you went through your parents, and that's how it goes, it goes. But it's true when we haven't cut, como es que se llama el cable,
Hmm.
of or of experience, it will continue going and going. And I feel like now is our time to, now that I feel like the conversation of mental health is becoming more bigger, is we still need to do a lot of work, but it's to not only focus on us, but to get help for an entire family. Because I feel like
Hmm.
when we have those conversations in our households, starting from our household, to our communities and involving others, that's when we're going to see a more positive, way or reaction towards accepting and moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with you. And there's two things that you make me think of. One is a book that I highly recommend. It's called
Mm-hmm.
It Didn't Start With You by Mark Walling. This book essentially
Mm-hmm.
walks you through how your body, and I won't, I probably won't do it justice by trying to explain, but there's a specific story that I can think of how the author talks about a patient he had who came and talked about certain things he was experiencing in his body, in his physical body. And they were trying to figure out why it is that he was having this like dreams of burning and feeling like his body was hot. And they were able to tie it back to a
Mm-hmm.
family member from a couple of generations back that was burned alive. And I know it's a very drastic thing to think of, but the whole case he was talking about was of how
Mm-hmm.
our body keeps track of things that have happened not just to us but to our generations before. And I think that's something really interesting to think about, and whether we think it's as true or
Mm-hmm.
not, it's important to think about how can things be passed on to us from our family members. What has been passed on to me from my parents? It sometimes is not just the good
Mm-hmm.
things, it's not just the values, it's not just the
Mm-hmm.
the really good decision making. Sometimes it's the
Mm-hmm.
things that we actually don't even think that are there, that we learned from our parents, from our grandparents, that we saw, that we heard about, that have been passed on to us. So that's one thing. The second thing, and I think that it's really important to
Mm-hmm.
look at, is the ripple effect. The ripple effect that it can have when one person chooses to make an action and then another one follows. So in this case, I'm sharing about something personal. I was
Mm-hmm.
sexually abused when I was little. I lived without essentially recognizing that, or without knowing that it had happened to me, for years. Up until I was 19 years old, it was when it came back to me. The memory was revealed to me that I had experienced that. It was the next 5 years from that point on were the toughest years of my life, because I did not want to recognize that I had gone through it, even though my body was living it, like I was going through the whole experience again. One thing I'll say
Mm-hmm.
with that is never ever
Mm-hmm.
protect abusers. Never ever protect abusers. It's important to know that, because an abuser
Never.
will most likely do it again. So that's the first thing. But as I'm sharing this, I
Mm-hmm.
went through my own journey of not wanting to acknowledge it. I was drinking, and I'm not saying drinking is bad. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not going into that conversation. I'm more talking about what I did. I went through a journey of like just wanting to forget that I had ever gone through those
Mm-hmm.
experiences, until I finally chose to take a step and seek help. But I was so afraid to be categorized as something is wrong with Eddy. I was so afraid of that, because I was told when I was younger that
Mm-hmm.
psicólogos,
Mm-hmm.
terapeutas, those people are for crazy people. You only go with them when you got problems. And I did not want to be a problem
Mm-hmm.
kid, because I was a really good kid growing up. So I wanted to have my ish together. And I thought I did. But I was an emotional mess. And the reason was because
Mm-hmm.
my body was just like bursting out everything that I had been holding on to when I was little. So the really amazing thing that happened when I chose to take that first step and go to therapy was that probably about 6 months after me, my mom decided to start going into therapy. And I still get emotional to think about that, because
Wow.
for me, the fact that I chose to take a
Mm-hmm.
step to do that was one thing that brought me peace. But there's no peace like knowing that my mom has peace in
Mm-hmm.
her heart. And she's been going through therapy now for the
Mm-hmm.
last 3.5 years. Took a break. She was like, I need to go back again. There's stuff that I got to do. I gotta shield myself. That's what she calls it. I have to shield myself. And I'm like, you know what? Call it whatever you want, but you're doing the work. And she's been on that journey now. She has a session every
Yes.
Friday when I'm here. And I'm so proud of her for taking that journey. So that's two of us. Then comes a cousin of mine who calls me and says, hey, I'm going through this. And she starts her own healing journey through Tu Lider. which is really exciting. Then
Mm-hmm.
comes other cousins who've now decided to do that journey. Then my little brother. And you see what happens when one person chooses to do, and I'm not saying this was thanks to me or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can care less about the credit. I'm looking at what happens when a family member who knows you the best starts to see a change in you. They will see that it's not for crazy people. It's
Yes.
actually for you to experience peace in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And you actually brought like tears to my eyes to hear that your mom, did that step after, he saw the change that made him you. And it's so true. And I want to highlight what you said. Do never, ever, ever protect abusers, not even as a family member. I say this, please. Do never. Like you said, if si lo conoces, if your friend, if your brother, sister, whatever, do never, no matter who it is, do never, because they will do it again. And that's a very emphasized part that when you said, I'm like, yes, everybody needs to know that a veces cuando we like think that they might not do it, or like, oh, because o va a tener ese efecto en la familia, it's causing more damage, and you're actually being como estás siendo parte de lo que la persona hizo. So please don't ever. And also share, like how you said, being like the first step, you seek help, and because you wanted it, you wanted peace for you. So also to it's nice to see that you didn't want to be categorized as crazy, esa cosa del loco, because that's why we have been mentalized in our community, like psicólogos es de locos, o el terapista. And that is because we don't have that conversation that it's okay, that it's okay, you went through that, you feel like you need to talk with someone, it's okay. Maybe I'm not the right person to talk with because I might have my own problems, but you have to go with someone who is going to lead you to the right path for you to feel at peace, to be good within yourself, because sometimes you have to do it for yourself, not for others. You have to do it for you to be like, okay, this is what I'm going through. I'm doing it for myself. And now that like you saw the change, when you were saying, I'm like, wow, like the effect that had on your mom and your cousin, your little brother, and your family. And I feel that this is what we need in our community, like that effect, como le llaman el efecto dominó, right? Because we
Yes.
need to create those spaces for our family members, for our communities, that to know that it's not for crazy people, that you're not crazy, that you just need to be alguien especialista, obviamente, who is going to lead you, like it, to tell you that it's okay. Because so many times we're brought, like for example in your case, and I want to focus this too on the sexual assault, that it only happens to women. No, it does not. So sometimes it's very hard for other males to say that, to come from and say it, because of what they're going to be categorized. And no matter how you identify yourself, if that happened to you, you need to say it, no matter what gender, no matter how is your identification of pronouns. It like is it's sad when society sometimes puts the blame on women, of the blame on others, that will put you at this label, just and blame you as the victim, rather than who did that to you. Sorry.
No, no, no. You left. Yes, 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 yes. Yes
Mhm.
to everything you said. Um, I think it's really important to remember that your traumatic experiences, or rather, your experiences, do not
Mhm.
define you. You are who you are. They can be part of
Yes.
your journey, they can be part of who you become, they can tell a story, but you can choose what story you tell.
Hmm.
You have the power to write your story. In this
Yes.
case, I chose to rewrite my story and to utilize what I had experienced. So, in this case, the sexual abuse I had experienced, it doesn't make me less of a man. It is what it is.
Hmm.
I went through it. I like to think of it,
No.
and this will be an extreme. I know some people will be like, "What?" I like to think of it as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of it as a gift that I went through. Because of that,
Mm-hmm.
it is that I am where I am now, and it is that I'm headed where I'm headed now. And he made me stronger. I am now in charge
Yeah.
of writing my story. I'm the author of my story, so therefore I'm rewriting it and I'm looking at it from a place of power, which is what fuels me to continue to do the work that I do, to continue to
Mm-hmm.
reach people who may be experiencing the same thing, to continue to empower people and to help them heal and experience peace in their heart,
Mm-hmm.
so that what I went through is not just sitting there in a box as a story that I keep hiding from
Mm-hmm.
people. What good does that do to anyone? It doesn't take anything away from
Mm-hmm.
me, it actually gives to people.
Nothing.
So, therefore, I'm going to continue to utilize it. So, great point, men
Mm-hmm.
out there. If you have experienced any type of abuse, sexual abuse, this
Mm-hmm.
does not make you any less of a man. It doesn't define you. However, you have the power
Mm-hmm.
in your hands, whether you're a man or a woman, any gender, you have the power in your hands to choose whether this just sits on a shelf and it gets dusty and every once in a while it pokes you and it reminds you that it's there, or you turn it into your power, which is your story.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't know how to clap and go everywhere because yes, yes, yes to everything you said, and it's true. And I'm so happy for that como te apoderas de eso. That like I said, it doesn't define you, but that's el motor que te anima to what we're going to talk about right now. To Lider, which I think is so amazing. The mission and to focus on El Salvador, and I know like it's focused on El Salvador and especially to young people. So I wanted to ask like more about that because of course Tu Lider is it's an organization who was born from why you have learned, why you went through the path of healing um that you took also from other different people, that we were talking before recording about, because of course an idea doesn't come by one person but a montón de personitas dando su granito de arena. So I talk about what is Tu Lider, and then why especially focusing on the youth of people.
Yes. So Tulida is a community organization that was born out of a need for resources that specifically focus on empowering youth. And this was in the community of Valle Dorado
Mm-hmm.
in La Libertad, El Salvador. That's where I grew up. So for me, it's very close to my heart because it's my community, it's where I came from. The reason why I decided to start a journey of creating a nonprofit was, and I say that and I laugh a little bit because starting a journey of creating an organization is not an
Mm-hmm.
easy step. It's not something that is like one day to another. However,
Mm-hmm.
I started this just as an idea, as something that we could do to help youth, because my mom, who is a co-pastor of a church here in Valle Dorado, had youth that were coming to
Mm-hmm.
the church and they were asking specific questions about things that they are going through as youth. And in my journey, I've been blessed enough to be
Mm-hmm.
exposed to really incredible people like Bill Hoffman, who I mentioned before, Sia Bowler, who is an expert in leadership, who I admire very much, and many other people like Gracie Murphy, who is a
Mm-hmm.
founder of the Justice Project in Honduras. People who I admire so much that I've learned from, I've listened to, I've studied, them. So I can say that because they had an
Mm-hmm.
expertise in the field. So me grabbing from them little pieces of the things that they
Mm-hmm.
share, little pieces of their wisdom, is how I decided to start my own journey of developing myself, which we call human development. My own journey of developing me, not just professionally, but just in
Mm-hmm.
my own emotional journey of healing, in my own emotional intelligence, increasing my own emotional intelligence. So when I looked at what are the things that have helped me to become the person that I am, there were three main things that stood out to me in my own life. One of them was the moment that I chose to go to therapy. The second one was the moment that I met someone who I
Mm-hmm.
love very much. Her name is Sara.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that was incredible is because that's where my leadership development journey started. She connected me to a lot of resources that led me to meet people like Sia Bowler, who are experts in leadership. And that developed me to increase my own self belief in the things that I could accomplish. So that was the second moment that was crucial. And the third was when I met Bill Hoffman,
Mm-hmm.
which started my journey of understanding what emotional intelligence is and how can you have control over it and not allow your emotions to control you. So those three things were what essentially came to my mind
Mm-hmm.
when I thought of what could we do to help this youth. The first thing we did was hire a therapist to come and just
Mm-hmm.
give a chat to the youth of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Once we saw the effect that it was having in them, that's when we said, well, what if these kids had access to a therapist anytime that they needed it? What if these kids could have talleres, workshops that are focused on leadership development at an early age?
Mm-hmm.
What if we didn't have to wait until you're 25, 26, 35, 50 to realize, oh crap, I went through a traumatic experience? What if you had an opportunity to start to heal sooner and not me when I
Mm-hmm.
was 25 when I started my journey in healing? Could that have an effect in their lives? And that's where what fueled me and the little light bulbs started to go on to say, oh wait, we can actually put something together here.
Mm-hmm.
I started to share ideas with people, and they were giving their granito de arena and being like, what if you did this? Talk to this person, reach out to this person who's been running a healing
Mm-hmm.
program in Texas for a while. And then that's how they started to fuel resources to me to read this, study this, learn here, speak to this therapist. And everyone that I was talking to was like, wait, how come no one has done this that they know of? Maybe there's someone out there who's doing something similar to what I'm doing. But to me, nobody that I knew was providing free
Mm-hmm.
resources to people who live in communities who barely make anywhere between $7 to $10 a day if you have a job to pay for a $12 therapy session, which you
Mm-hmm.
need once a week,
Mm-hmm.
or at least hopefully once a month, if you want to delay a journey, of healing by a lot. Um, but nobody was doing
Yeah.
that. So I said, well, if $10 will pay for a therapy session, then let's do this. I'll find a therapist that we can hire to do this, and we can start to put these kids in continuous therapy. And that's how we created the first step of what is now Tu Lider. This was back in May of last year. So it was going to be a year this May of us doing this. Now, thankfully, we have 28 kids participating in continuous programming of talleres that are learning about emotional
Wow.
development. So, little basic things like what are the emotions? Where do you feel them? How do you talk about an emotion? To things like let's write our values. What do you value in your
Mm-hmm.
life? How do you communicate them? What is respect? So, all these bigger things, conversations that any kid their age maybe is not having with their family members. And if they are, prop to the parents for talking to their kids about this. But if they're not, then now they have an opportunity to do so. To now, we were about to include 5 more kids in continuous therapy sessions, which will include, as of right now, a total of 12 kids participating in therapy sessions continuously. That, to me,
Wow.
is the gift that we're given
Wow.
when we choose to use our power to bring healing to others. And that's what Tu Lider is about.
Yes. Wow. Wow. I like props, uh, like props, and it's just amazing the work that you're doing over there with the kids, and it's. I mean, like I said, I told you before recording, I was like a stalker in your website, uh, because I was just reading and like finding. I'm like, wow, because like I said, maybe well, I'm not aware of someone who has done it, So you like I reading Tu Lider has been the first one that I have seen that actually provides resources in Centro America, en este caso en El Salvador. You know, I would love to see this type of work everywhere. You know what I mean? Especially in your youth people. And like I said, what would be if these kids will have las herramientas right now and not wait till like te gradúas or like then when you start realizing, because if we go years, and this is more like if we put like las cosas como like what's it called, I don't want to be like political type of thing, but when kids, especially right now, and especially in our countries where there's a lot of like street violence, is a lot of desigualdad y cosas los que pasan. When you don't have these resources, the main thing you get to your head is that I have to go miles, cross borders to have these resources, you know? And you go over there and then you come here and then aquí nos la, lo que we all dream of when we're over there, you know what I mean? Like we have done like it's just work and work and work and work, and sometimes like that gets entold in your mind too. So now hearing you and knowing that this group of people have those resources, they're going to get those resources and invest it in their communities and be the leaders of this community, and hopefully seeing them as the leaders of the country when it comes, you know. It's like, you know, va a ser como otra vez
Yeah.
¿cómo se llama? El efecto dominó, you know, like they get this opportunities, they talk to therapists, they have, you know, the leadership program and everything, and now it's like boom,
Hmm.
you know, like I don't, they don't, I mean, I'm just assuming, but I just think that having opportunities that you feel that you are capable of doing it, instead of waiting until like, okay, I have to go somewhere else for those opportunities.
Definitely. And there's one thing, obviously, in this case, working with youth,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are starting their journey in
Mm-hmm.
healing, and they'll start to feel more in control of their
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and they'll start to feel more capable of doing
Mm-hmm.
things. There's another aspect that we have to recognize, which is
Mm-hmm.
this is a third world country. Las oportunidades siempre las ven que están en el
Mm-hmm.
norte, no aquí. And they know that. So what they do is
Yes.
they just want to go over there. Well, my vision for Tu Lider is
Mm-hmm.
that we can also be part of creating opportunities for them here. One of them is preparing them for university,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them the opportunities that they can have. Thankfully, we have two students right now
Mm-hmm.
that we've built becas scholarships for to go to university. And it's so exciting to see our
Mm-hmm.
very first two niños que están participando en esto, or jóvenes que están participando, that are in university, that are studying to,
Mm-hmm.
finish their university, that we can help. The other part that we want to include is teaching them English, because here in El Salvador, English is really crucial for certain fields that
Mm-hmm.
they can work in. So we don't want a bunch of healthier kids who
Mm-hmm.
are frustrated. We want to teach them to become solution seekers. And the reason why I
Mm-hmm.
say that is because there's two young adults that I can think of that I admire so much. Both of them are 22, and
Mm-hmm.
both of them have launched their businesses without the help of anyone. They started with their own little chalet, little place that they work from. One of them makes tortas and licuados, and that thing is popping. And I admire her so much of how her business is growing. The second one is un barbero,
Mm-hmm.
a barber, in our town. He has a second location, 22 years old, a second location.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with both of them, and
Wow.
both of them expressed just how much gratitude they have to see now youth have opportunities to create their own opportunities. So in this case,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't want to just be part of their journey in
Yes.
which they heal. We want to be part of preparing them to become the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of their community, the ones that stand up and say, this is injustice, this is not okay, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to fight for more. Because at the end of the day, the older will
Mm-hmm.
pass away, and the younger will stay with the problems that the older created. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, the younger needs to be ready to find solutions for the
Exactly.
problems of the
Mm-hmm.
older. So therefore, we need to prepare these youth to not bring on baggage that they could have just left in the past, or rather that they could have helped to become part of their power, so they could find solutions for the future and for them to become the leaders of tomorrow. So, right now we're in one community, was technically two communities, but just two different towns in the same area in Sacacoyo. Our next step is Chalatenango. That's where we're
Mm-hmm.
headed, and we're going to be launching a program in there. Then after that
Mm-hmm.
is San Martin. So we're growing, and we're trusting
Mm-hmm.
in the world, in the universe, in God, that the resources will enter the country so that we can help spread this. Because at the end of the day, I always remember there's always a little kid out there in the world who wishes someone would provide an opportunity for them to get ahead in life. There's always a little Eddie wishing that someone would open a door for them,
Yes.
that someone would extend a hand. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get here on my own. I got
Mm-hmm.
here through all the people that decided to help, through all the people whose hearts were touched for them to help me to become who I am now and to be where I am now. So therefore, why would I not do the same for them? And the beauty is that there's people who want to help.
Yes, yes, and I don't know. Creo que lo voy a repetir miles veces. Amazing, amazing work, and it's so true. And I'll continue watching the journey of Tu Lider, of how it's growing, because it's truly an amazing, amazing work. And it's true. A veces como te digo, we, I mean, uno que ha crecido en Centroamérica, we don't see the opportunities there. They're like, oh, it's this thing. Aquí no hay trabajo, aquí no hay oportunidades. But if you had had someone who tells you, you can actually do it here. You can actually, this is like, aquí están las herramientas. I know would have had a different mentality and leave not leave them aside, but to own into all those experience that we have been through, to use them in our advantage to create. And like, it's true, like you said, I really like how you said, like, you, I mean, it's sad to say, pero los viejitos se van a ir, las personas que están
Mhm.
ahorita en el poder se van a ir, en quiénes son los que quedamos, somos nosotros, son los niños que están ahorita, son los jóvenes. And if we don't want to continue seeing our countries or communities how they are, with honestly lack of resources, we need to make the work right now. That way, maybe if we don't benefit from it, some others will benefit, and then we'll go from the generation. We're just gonna cut, como dijiste, el wire.
Yes,
This is when you're gonna cut it. The way we grew, and then otras personas, otros adolescentes, crezcas con las herramientas to not repeat what we had to deal with through all this journey. So
definitely.
yeah, Eddie, thank you so much again. I don't know. I'm so excited. I'm like to talk with you. It was a pleasure. Do you want to say anything before we close?
I want I want to say thank you for this opportunity, Alejandra, because I think it's really important for a new organization like Tu Lider to have exposure. In order for us to be able to do the work that we do, we have to recognize that we need the resources to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important part of this to me
Mm-hmm.
is not the exposure of my organization, but rather the message, which is healing is
Yeah.
necessary. Do not think that it's
Yes.
for locos, for only for some people. Constantly just ask yourself, what else can I grow in? And at the same time, have
Mm-hmm.
patience with yourself if your healing journey doesn't look like anyone else's, because it's your own story, it's your own book. You have the power to rewrite it. So just ask yourself, what story do I want to tell? And be honest with yourself about where you are right now. Give thanks about where you are
Mm-hmm.
now. Do not wish you were anywhere else, because that will create anxiety in your life. Give thanks about where you are now, and then ask yourself, who
Yeah.
can I reach out to that will listen to me, that will understand me? And trust me, many times it's not someone that's next to you, it might be a stranger. The way that Tu Lider was created and is implemented now is to minimize the la creencia that therapy is for locals. So we implement our programming in a way that is playful, that it's
Mm-hmm.
fun, and that it helps the kids connect with what they're learning in a way in which it makes it less threatening. So sometimes we have to do that for ourselves, for us to
Mm-hmm.
embark on the journey of
Yeah.
healing. So I invite you to consider looking for someone who can listen to you, not looking for help. If you want to don't want to listen, or if you want to consider, or if you don't want to categorize it as help, that's fine. Just look at it as, can someone help me
Mm-hmm.
process this? Can someone help me understand something, this aspect of my life? And definitely feel free to reach out to us. You can feel free to follow us
Mm-hmm.
on Tu Lider Project on Instagram, on Facebook. If you know of
Mm-hmm.
someone in El Salvador that is doing similar work, please feel free to help us connect. We're here to help and serve communities. We want to be able to expand and grow. So definitely feel free to reach out at any moment. And thank you, Alejandra.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for sending us, like a message to be wanting to be part. And thank you for creating these resources for people in El Salvador and to everyone who's listening. Eddie is also going to be on the panel on May 29th. So if you have any question, you want to learn anything, I'm going to leave the section where you can submit question for the panel. Also, all the social medias for Eddie, the Tu Lider, and his podcast is going to be linked below. That way you can go and reach it out and support it. Like, and if, like he said, if you have someone in El Salvador who might benefit from it, please spread the word the word. Dile a tu familia en El Salvador if you have some. That way we can get more resources towards the community. And thank you, Eddie, for taking the time to come and talk to us from El Salvador.
My pleasure.